Our protagonist woke up in a pure white space, and what he saw before him was the smile of a beauty which was far more superior to any human he has ever seen. He instantly knew that she was a goddess, and he was dead. He had learned enough in web novels that once someone dies, they transcend to another world where they are given unimaginable powers. He too would be given some power, and he would start living the life of a hero, and then he would do things with pretty girls. High hopes for someone who has just died. Suddenly the goddess spoke and said that he had finally woken up. She called him a shitty, unpopular, and unable to hold a proper conversation with women, Mr. Virgin. That too with an unhinged smile on her face. He was shocked to hear that, but thanks to her younger sister, he had gotten used to such verbal abuse. Moreover, the goddess's words were nothing in comparison to his sister's. She introduced herself as the goddess. He asked her if he was really dead, and she confirmed. Upon asking, he knew that the reason for his death was that he collided with a high school girl who fell from a building and suffered a fatal injury to his spinal cord. He was slowly remembering the entire thing. The goddess, with a smirk, said that he had fallen prey to the girl's big buttocks. She then asked him if he was satisfied. He was ashamed and stunned to hear such things coming from a goddess. He thought to himself that he would not deny the desire to be sat upon by a woman's buttocks, but the way he actually did, he could not even feel the softness of it. He asked her about the girl who fell on her, and she said that she was saved thanks to his efforts. He was glad that his death was not in vain. The goddess then said that she saved his mortal life, and to reward that good deed of his, she would give him a special favor and a second chance at life. He was smitten to hear these words. It was the usual pattern he had been waiting for. She added that he would be reincarnated in a fantasy world of swords and magic. To be more precise, she would have him possess a person. So basically in the goddess's world, there was a food of reincarnators and a lack of bodies for those souls. Therefore, to ensure a smooth execution of the work, they select and procure in advance the bodies of natives. She showed the body he would possess. The boy was called Alan. He was a teenager with an outstanding body, and he knew that he would be getting a lot of action with this one. She again called him a virgin loner and said that now he won't be one anymore and thus should be grateful. He was cursing her in his head and she read it all and was ready to kill him again. He asked how the possession of the body will actually work, and she explained that Alan's original personality would cease to exist as he was a novice adventurer raised in an orphanage, and soon he would lose his life in a starting dungeon. When his soul would leave his body, then she would have his soul inhabit Alan's body. Suddenly he realized something. If Alan is to die in a dungeon, then he would end up as a monster's food, and he did not want to possess the body of a zombie as he had had enough of being called smelly in his previous life. The goddess said that it was the reason why she was giving him a transmigrator's privilege. She would give him the regeneration skill. It was set to activate the moment his soul would possess Alan's body. So basically all the wounds that Alan's body would get would be healed as soon as his soul would be injected in his body. He was surprised to know that such a SSS tier thing was given to him for free. He thought of a plan. If he would use his regeneration powers on a beautiful girl, then she would be filled with gratitude and would make out with him easily. An easy goodbye to his virgin life. He was all ready to begin his new horny life as a harem king. But little did he know that expectations and reality are two different things. 3 years had passed since he got Alan's body, and now he was known as Alan in the other world, where he still was a skinny virgin. He was getting closer to setting a new record for keeping his virginity. He did not even hold a girl's hand in these 3 years. A real loser. There were also a couple of miscalculations. First was that defeating monsters was hard. Secondly, he could not learn magic by leveling. This was told to him by the goddess in one of his dreams, as she forgot to mention that earlier. The prospect of making it big was simply hopeless. The only card he could play was the regeneration skill, but the pain he experienced did not go away. Thus it was impossible to cut pain receptors. He could not even form a party as nobody wanted such an incompetent and weak companion. Also, he could not use his regeneration skill in public as heal skill, which was an inferior skill, was considered a miracle art, according to the church. And the church was a dangerous organization with money, authority, and lust. The last thing he wanted was to have eyes on his skill. He reached the slave trader and he had already decided that since he could not find companions, he would live a slow-paced life. With a slave, he could give them any lewd order, and he could also forbid a slave from revealing his skill by using a slave crest, which would make them obey him unconditionally. He entered the slave trade building and the spooky owner asked him what did he need. His strategy was that he would buy slaves that the seller could not sell. The seller took him behind his shop into a dark room where there were 2 girls chained locked up. They looked really beaten up with eyes and arms missing. One was an ancient elf and another was an elder dwarf. They could have been sold for a lot, but because of their battered state, they were unsold. Alan took both of them. The total price the seller quoted was enough to blow away his savings in a blink of an eye, but he wanted to return the girls their dignity. Soon he loaded them on a cart and took them to a faraway place where he then used his regeneration powers. The cut-off hands, the eyes, and everything else was restored to what they were before. They both looked really pretty. He was shocked to see such pretty girls, and the girls were shocked to see their new state. He tried to act smart and tough in front of them, but he ended up biting his tongue. The girls asked him his name, and he had a smile on his face, as this was the beginning of his harem story. You must be thinking that Alan would be now happy with his harem life, but in reality, that's not the case, as by buying those two, he blew all his savings to the last coin. He had no money to pay for an inn and was forced to live in a monastery deep in the mountains. And he also had the extra duty of providing sustenance to both the girls. To put it bluntly, he was broke. Even the goddess used to make fun of him whenever she got the chance. She even used to interrupt his inner monologues. He just wanted both the girls to be considerate towards him and maybe hug him for restoring their health. He was still a virgin, though. The ancient elf's name was Sylphie and the elder dwarf's name was Noel. Everything about them was a mystery except their breed, and that was because he could not read that world's script. Hence he could not understand the appraisal scroll provided to him by the seller. He needed food to feed them all, so he decided to begin farming. He began plowing when Sylphie asked him what he was doing. He explained to her his plan of growing yams. She looked confused and asked him if he would be growing them. He assumed that she wanted to eat the yam tended to by his skinny virgin buttock. Alan was considerate, though, because he bought fruits for them and told them that he would not let them sleep under the sky or stay hungry. Although his wallet took a hit, he wanted to feed them well so that they could be quite good to cuddle with. Noel and Sylphie were still quite wary of him. In such a situation, he could not just ask them to make love with him. He found some work to support the three of them. One day he left for work, leaving them behind. Sylphie was confused as to how he could leave his slaves alone. Both she and Noel had got their original powers back. Even though they had a slave crest, it was not hard for them to break away from his control. She wondered if he was testing their loyalty. She also did not understand why he was growing yam on his own, as he should have known by reading the appraisal scroll that she had advanced tree magic that can grow plants instantly. By using it, he could immediately grow plants and bear fruits. She just needed an order from him, and then he would not have to labor. She was confused about his goal, as even after restoring their bodies, there was no sign of him wanting their bodies. She wondered if after winning them over, he had planned to do something bad. To confirm her suspicions, she even followed him, but she found him working in a clinic where he was using healing skills on people. She understood that he was not using his restoration skills because of the church. She could not understand why he was pretending to be a good human when he was a person who bought slaves, but then he did not do anything with the slaves. He was messing up with her mind. 3 months had passed, and yams were harvested. She finally asked him why he wasn't using her to raise food. She used her tree magic and showcased how she could grow food in an instant. Alan was stunned to see her power. He thought that she was hiding her powers from him. He later found out that it was written on the scroll, but only if knew how to read, he would have known. He was conflicted as he did not want them to know that their master was a virgin loser who could not even read, so, to make it up, he began blabbering. He said something like magic is a two-sided coin and can be a poison or a cure. Therefore, he decided not to force them to use their magic. It all barely made any sense, but if the protagonist is saying so, then it can't be helped. He was embarrassed by the time he was done with his yapping. Sylphie was sold by his words, and she assumed that he must have had a tragic past which made him act this way. She was ashamed of flaunting her magic like that. The next day when Alan went to harvest, he saw that the farm was brimming with fresh vegetables. He was shocked as Sylphie did it all overnight. Her powers overshadowed him. His dreams of becoming a talented lord that mastered agriculture was ruined. This was his perfect plan to use modern knowledge to be unparalleled, but unfortunately his spotlight was stolen. He was on his knees feeling like a failure until he realized that he had something to show off still. His plan was to invent concrete which did not exist in that world. With sturdy buildings, they could improve their living conditions. Noel walked up to him and asked him what he was doing. This was the first time Noel was speaking to him so freely. She asked him to let her join him. He explained to her that he was trying to build a new house using concrete and cement. He then explained to her what these were. She asked him everything about cement and other materials needed for construction. She then asked him to stand back. She used her extraction powers to extract all the raw materials in a blink of an eye. Then she used pulverize to create cement. Alan's spotlight was again stolen. He has also noticed that Sylphie and Noel had begun talking a lot with each other. He thought that they both had joined hands while he got so full of himself. Soon their house was ready thanks to manufacturing Master Noel and plant master Sylphie. Alan was completely done with his life. He wanted to be the hero. At this point, Alan does not know that since the time he bought them both, He will, surprisingly for him, be worshipped as a demon king, and in the future, he will be regarded as a threat by a hero, and will experience a life full of ups and downs. Noel was glad that Alan taught her the art of construction. According to her, Alan was not just a simple nobody. His restoration powers were great, and he was not flaunting it either. Sylphie told her that they could put their trust into Alan. That night, Noel went out as she wanted to take weight off of Alan's shoulder. The next day, when Alan woke up, he saw that there were 2 more houses standing there. Noel greeted him with a smile and said that she had built one for each. She said that she had worked hard and thus wanted him to praise her. Sylphie joined them and pulled his leg by saying that he should actually praise her, but Alan was a virgin loner, so things like these were like dreams for him. He assumed they thought low of him and felt unsafe with him, that's why they had their own houses. He realized that he could pay Noel as much as he possibly could. He finally touched her head, and he was smitten by the touch of her. Too much to handle for someone who died a virgin. Sylphie was kinda jealous. Noel was blushing and then gave him a push, and all of this made Sylphie more and more insecure. She calmed herself down, thinking that she was the highest species, an ancient elf, and things like this should not be affecting her. She decided to increase the number of harvestable plants to make him happier, and like that a couple of more months had passed. As usual, Alan was tending to the fields by himself. In that world, magic had 5 basic attributes, just like any other world: fire, water, wind, metal, and earth. Sylphie had an evolved attribute for plants, while Noel's aptitude was fire and metal. Their compatibility was beyond compare. They used their magic when they wanted it. Not once had Alan forced them to use it against their will. According to her, he was not blinded by desires and was living his life like a hermit. Now she wanted to know the real him and his true feelings. She wanted to know from him the reason why he specifically bought them. But little did she know that he bought them only so that he could sleep with them and have fun every night. Noel joined her and asked him to tell the reason. They said that they were rare species and did not want anything at all from them. But Alan was already given food and shelter by them, and he did not know what else he would want from them. He did not want to destroy his self-esteem by making them work more and sitting idle himself. They had not shown him yet, but they could use their rare magic to create ultra-rare items too. It was too much for him to handle, and he just wanted to tell them that all he wanted to do was to make out with them day and night. Sleep with them without clothes on all the time and never leave the bed. But obviously our sour loser could never say that, so he said that he wanted to free the world from hunger instead. Again, the girls were sold. They bought his half-baked words. They deemed him like a god for such high thinking. Wish they knew how perverted and virgin he really was. Sylphie wanted to follow him and see how he would bring his vision into reality. Sylphie told him that if such was the case, then they needed to begin cultivating land as soon as possible. Alan was missing his sister one day, and for him who had reincarnated in another world, the only regret he had was that he left her sister in the other world. He wondered how Sylphie could not understand his ulterior motives. Back to the main story, he still had a bunch of modern knowledge up his sleeve. He said that they should make fertilizer. He explained to the girls about it, and they were amazed by it as it would require Sylphie to use less mana. Suddenly Noel asked him to teach her how to make it so that she could begin immediately. Alan knew that he could not let his spotlight go away once more. But being the untouched virgin he was, he could not resist when Noel began nudging him for the ingredients and process. He finally gave in. Before lunch, Noel was ready with fertilizers. Both Sylphie and Alan were surprised to see it. So now, Noel was in charge of manufacturing. Sylphie was in charge of cultivation, and Alan was left in charge of reclamation and logging. The odd jobs were given to him. They stole his thunder, yet again. Now both of them wanted him to praise them. Noel was the first one to get the patting, and Alan was again mesmerized by how smooth her skin and hair was. Sylphie was again jealous. She was thinking how curious a person he was because she was speechless by his ways and ideals. She was sure that the reason she was bought was because only an ancient elf could freely control the tree magic that stimulates plant growth. She was glad that he was respecting the independence of a slave. Soon he began cultivating the field using his restoration powers, where he restored the fertility of the soil. Noel was amazed to see that he was working towards the goal of eliminating world hunger. She realized that he had never given them an order as such. She swore upon an elder dwarf's name that she would be supporting him. Sylphie and Noel decided that they would do everything for him just because of how kind and visionary he was. The goddess appeared in front of him one night and began verbally abusing and making fun of his virginity. He wanted to have fun after all, and he decided that if he is not getting some of them, he would create some. He went to Noel and showed her a blueprint and asked her to create the thing. When her arms touched his, the virgin buttock felt things he had never felt before. The blueprints were of games like Jenga and chess because, according to him, if they would play games together, they would surely find more topics to talk about, and maybe he could take advantage of a punishment game and could get his 18+ development. Now we have to see if Alan could become someone who would exploit the others or not. Sylphie saw them both working on things she had never heard the names of. Jenga and chess were foreign words to her. She asked them if she could join too, and Alan let her in with a smile. She assumed that his smile had a hidden meaning. She completely misunderstood Alan. According to her, the usually lethargic and dumb Alan was just a show he was putting on, and in reality, he was a much serious and powerful man. Who's going to tell her that she is completely wrong here? She wanted to be a support for someone like him. They began with playing Reversi. Sylphie was amazed to see those games, and according to her, they were a great legendary invention, which could pull both children and adults alike and cause a great war, and Alan was letting them see such an invention for free. Soon, Alan played his pervert game and said that they should play a game where the winner could give the loser any order they wanted. Sylphie, as usual, was overthinking it. She thought that it was a test set up by Alan to check their abilities, but both Sylphie and Noel ended up accepting Alan's offer of betting. Sylphie thought that there was no way they could win since Alan was the inventor of the game and he knew everything about it. But at the end of the game, Alan lost. A virgin loser is not just a name given to him after all. Sylphie thought that she should give such an order which would make Alan believe that she was his strength. She asked him to register them at the Merchants Guild. She wanted to have ownership rights for those games so that she could make money and help Alan. Alan sighed because he was content that they did not ask to be freed from their slavery. As per the bet, Sylphie registered at the Merchants Guild and Noel registered at the Alchemists Guild. Seeing Alan happy, Sylphie thought that they both had passed the test with flying colors. 2 weeks passed by and Alan kept playing games with Sylphie and as a matter of fact kept losing even after removing time constraints and other rules. She called him weak and her words made him a simp again. Both the girls used to go to the town, and one day Alan came with another plan to lose his virginity. This time he decided to invent alcohol. He was sure that alcohol would help him get some action. The goddess came and asked him where the girls were, and before leaving she showed the seed of suspicion in him about the girls. He realized that the girls did not go shopping and there were no other reasons as such for them to go to the town. He thought the worst was that they were selling themselves at the brothel so that they could afford expensive things since Alan did not have much money to begin with. He ran to the town to find the girls. While on his way, he realized that he had not provided the girls anything of substance, and for him to exploit them, he first needed to provide them a happy life. He finally found them in the town, and for a fact, they were not in a brothel. He then went to the bank to withdraw some money and give them, and he came to know that he had 3 million yen in his account. Sylphie had put all the money she had made from selling the games in his account. Every other person in the town was playing with the games he had invented, or more like, copied from that world to this world. She explained to him that to get the rights for the items, during discussions with the Merchants Guild, they made a holy pact. So the moment the games became a hit, she would have the guild to increase her rank to the highest, and with the condition that 1% of the sales will go to his account. He noticed tears in the girls' eyes. To do something for them, he asked them to buy anything they liked. By the time they finished shopping, they had bought 50 more slaves. Everyone was a beauty, and a harem was his dream. Sylphie told him that going forward, he was village chief and they expected a lot from him. Now Alan was given the duty of providing a livelihood for more than 50 slaves. Let's see how it goes. They all got home, and Alan wondered if he had made a mistake with these 50 more slaves. But then he put the blame on both the girls. Back at the shop, Alan was amazed by how smart Sylphie was with the bargaining and handling. He could barely catch up with her high specs. Sylphie and Noel were busy with tending the new slaves and were sorting them out based on their skills. Some were yet to get their skills. In this world, there were both hereditary skills and acquired skills, and the latter depended on the individuals. There was no skill to detect a skill which was yet to bloom, but Sylphie was able to detect them flawlessly. Things were moving too fast for Alan. He had to come up with a strategy for the future. Meanwhile, Sylphie was always worried if she disappointed him or not. He took his defeats as a way of him intentionally losing so that she would not feel bad. She thought that he did it all to prepare her for handling merchants. Slaves were always made to work till their bones, but he took them in his warm hands. They soon went to his room to discuss the future plans. He asked them to sit as there was only one bed in the room, and he was already sitting on it. But they declined the offer. He began by appreciating them for their hard work. He said that he would first take the money spent on each slave as their debt, and once they repay it, then he would remove their slave crests. Therefore, they should be focusing on agriculture and commerce. They would pay wages with the money they would make after selling items. This way, the slaves would get freedom, and Sylphie and Noel would collect money, and he would be freed from the duty of providing a livelihood for 50 slaves. Sylphie was shocked as the slaves' price would go up by a lot once their skills would blossom. She wanted him to rethink his plan, but little did she know that his tiny brain could not come up with anything better. He could not understand her vision. She wanted him to keep more talented girls so that he could erase world hunger in a better way. His only goal was to sleep with them. He again began blabbering his way through. He escaped the situation saying that he did not want slaves, but rather comrades who could walk beside him on their own will. Sylphie and Noel were amazed to hear him once again. So the plan was that Noel and the other dwarf girls would be producing farm tools and fertilizers. The elves would be growing yams, wheat, and other food products, and then they would sell those and make profits. Sylphie said that she thought she would not be surprised anymore, but again, she was at a loss of words. The road to lose virginity was a long road, but not a never-ending one. Sylphie was again in awe of him and how well his mind worked. She needed to explain to the other girls just how good Alan really was, since they were still a little perplexed. She told Noel that she must properly monitor Alan so as to not let him unwittingly seduce the other girls. Later, she and Noel explained the plan to the other girls, and they asked if it was not too convenient for them. She told them that such was their master, and they should get used to it. One of the slaves asked Sylphie if they did not need to serve Alan. That is to say, surrender their bodies to him. Sylphie agreed, as the girl too was an elf, and elves were the race that admired the symbol of beauty, and they were very skeptical about whom they gave their bodies to. The girl then asked if Alan was not interested in girls. Sylphie said that she did notice how he looked at her chest, back, and legs. Sylphie concluded that Alan was not someone who would hurt others without reason. The girl's name was Aura, and she was mischievous, and now she was really interested in her master, Alan. Aura really wanted Alan, and of course she was beautiful and all, so she had a chance with him. She wore really tight clothes and stared at herself because she was a narcissist, and everyone knew it. When she was caught and put in a cell, she turned her skin off because according to her, if it was her fate to be sold to someone for their pleasure and to be used as a toy, then it was better to become a liability to the trash merchant and die. Aura had given up on her life after her beauty and magic was gone, but then walked in on Alan, his master, and Sylphie, and they bought her and gave her a second chance on life. According to her, he was a fool, but Sylphie had told him that with time she would understand what a visionary he was. But still she found the idea of removing the slave crest stupid. After using his restoration powers, all their powers came back and their value went up. She got wet just by thinking about him. As a race, elves were a bundle of dignity and vanity. Their women in exchange for flatly refusing any and all base men settling for anyone. She was even aroused by Sylphie. She thought that if it was a plan of his to make her fall for him, then he was considerably skilled. She wanted to ask him to make out with her. She began with greeting him. She thought that he heard her inner sinful thoughts because she saw him staring at her. He asked her to play with her because he lost every time while playing with Sylphie and wanted to test he could win against her. He wanted to touch her chest if he would win. He told himself that he needed to act prudent as his lusty eyes could not stop staring at the chests and bottoms of girls. He was ready to play with Aura and punish when she would lose. He already imagined himself in between her chest as his prize. According to him, Sylphie was a beauty with shapely chests, whereas Aura was a beauty with huge chests. Like as always, the sore loser Alan lost all the games, and then he went to Sylphie to nag about Aura. Aura was glad that she won, and was thinking what punishment she would give to him. Sylphie smirked and told her that she completely failed. According to her, it was Alan's plan to lose intentionally. Sylphie told her that if she would try to get close with half-baked feelings, then she would get burnt. She gave Aura some advice, which was that the one who fell in love would always lost. Aura realized that no girl could take Sylphie's place. The first order he gave as the village chief was that he raised the ban to allow the slaves to play games and let them enjoy. He also reduced the time for hard labor to a minimum. But now removing the ban led to all the girls asking Alan to play with them, thanks to Noel, Sylphie, and Aura. He wondered if he instigated them that led to them spreading the news that he was a loser. The distance between him and the slaves was gradually decreasing thanks to the games. And since all the slaves have a common topic to talk about, even they all got close to each other, and the mastermind of this was obviously Sylphie. Hence they were living quite an enjoyable and presentable life. With time, Sylphie and Noel's power only increased. Soon the slaves asked him to rest, as they could do all the work by themselves. He was tired because their cute smiles always rendered him speechless. But he had enough as he had his trump card up his sleeve.